Good evening. I'd like to open this meeting of the Prescott Unified School District Governing Board to order and welcome you all here tonight. It is so nice to see so many friendly faces in our audience. Thank you for being here. I would also like to recognize that we have all three of our incoming board members who will take office in January here this evening. We have Stan Goligoski, and I'll come back to Stan. Jen Robertson, and Linda Kahn. And in case there would be some confusion about why Stan is sitting there and the other two are sitting out there, because Connie Donovan resigned partway through her term, Tim Carter chose not to fill her position because we were in the middle of election season, and it didn't seem to be a good idea. However, now that the election is over, the top vote getter, who happened to be Stan, was brought in to finish out Connie's term, which is tonight. So, welcome, Stan. Thanks for being.
The top four-year term.
For the 4 year.
Top four-year term, yes. Yes. All right. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. And could I get you both to do that tonight? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is approval of the agenda as presented. Are there any questions, changes, anything for the agenda?
Sorry, that was me.
Okay, could I get a motion, please?
I'll move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Likewise, with the minutes, we have the minutes from both the work study session of October 28, 22, and the minutes from the regular study and voting session meeting of November 1, 2022, as presented. Any changes, corrections on the minutes? All right. Could I get a motion on the minutes?
I'll move that we approve the minutes from the work study session of October 28, 2022, and the minutes from the regular study and voting session meeting of November 1st, 2022, as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes from the work study session of October 28, 2022, and the minutes from the regular study and voting session meeting of November 1, 2022, as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We move on to our presentations. We're finally at the end of our presentations for the district employees of PUSD. For those of you who may have missed it, we've spent this year recognizing all of our employee groups here in the district. And we have one set left to recognize. These are the people from our district office who didn't happen to be in positions that we've already recognized, and so tonight we will recognize those. First, we have our volunteers. Deb, would you step up here? First, we'd like to recognize and thank our fantastic volunteer coordinator, Deb Prieto. Deb has worked with hundreds of organizations and individuals to recruit, coordinate, and train volunteers to assist in classrooms, school offices, and other needs in the district. Kelly has 850 volunteers on her database and has recorded 5,185 volunteer hours so far this year. These volunteers provide invaluable support for our students and staff, and Deb is the hub of that activity. A huge thank you to Deb and to all of our PUSD volunteers. Thank you. Next, we move on to our Human Resources Department. We've already recognized Clark, so we'll ignore it.
Good choice.
Do I have any other human resources people?
They had other commitments this
Okay.
evening. Well, actually, Deb Prieto is part of our Human Resources Department volunteers.
Twice.
I'll read it anyway.
Fair enough, please, yes.
Next, we would like to recognize the members of the PUSD Human Resources Department. It's no accident that PUSD has been able to hire and retain exceptional teachers and staff when so many schools in the state can't begin to fill their positions. The HR department staff know the district and its students and focus on recruiting and hiring the people who meet their needs. They spend many hours searching for candidates and scouring their information to ensure quality in our schools. And we appreciate all that you do, and if you would share that with your department.
I absolutely will, thank you, thank you.
Last, but definitely not least, we have our stellar business department. So with those of you from the business department. We did recognize Brian as an administrator. You can hold it up. All right. I hope our community is aware of the almost unheard of audit performance of this group. Not just in the latest audit cycle, but in successive cycles. This is not a fluke. Every member of this team checks and rechecks every dollar and number in every transaction. And we're talking about thousands of transactions each month. Not only does this department ensure taxpayers that their taxes are being spent appropriately, but they bring widespread recognition to PUSD for their performance. We would like to recognize and salute you as well. You guys do. I would like us to give them a standing
I will let the others know as well. They had a family in town.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Appreciate that.
thank you very much.
All right, finally, I would like to recognize the terrific effort of this board. The past couple of years have been challenging, but this board has maintained a professional and caring attitude regardless of the challenges they have faced. At all times, they have been focused on the best interests of PUSD students, and I want to thank them for all they have done. In addition, I would like to recognize the new board members who will take these seats in January. Congratulations on your election, and thank you for your willingness to serve the needs of our community and children. I know Andy and Carl will provide terrific leadership and help you get up to speed as you move forward. That's it, I think.
So now it's my turn to be in the spotlight, but not really me. Sarah, come out.
Don't forget, for our online listeners and viewers, we need to speak into the mics.
Hold it. So, Sarah Vincent was appointed to this board in June of 2021. And since that time, she's been a tremendous board member, someone who is curious and inquisitive and always fierce in defending Prescott Unified School District and supporting the students, teachers, faculty, staff, and families here. And as a board member, I just want to say thank you for all of your dedication and service that you've put in over the last year and a half. We're going to miss you, and we hope that you stay involved with us. Thank you, Sarah. We have a little token for you signed by a number of people, so thank you. Deb, could you come out here, please?
Come on.
So, Deb Dillon has been our board president for 2 years, which is, I don't know if it's unprecedented, but it doesn't usually happen. Due to a number of different reasons, Deb stepped up after 2021 and took on the board presidency for 2022. And we can't be more grateful. Deb has been a fantastic leader. She has kept us on track. We've learned so much from you at least I've learned so much from you over these last 2 years. I know that Cara and Sarah have as well. Your willingness to lead and to keep us moving forward and to keep our focus on what's really important in PUSD has been incredible. And we can't thank you enough for all of your years of service. And we're going to give you one more thing that you need to pack to take with you to Ireland. Here's a picture of the district office and everybody's good wishes for you. But thank you, Deb, for all that you've done.
You know I can't pass up an opportunity to speak. So I would like to just say that this job has been a joy. I have loved, believe it or not, every minute of it. I thank the community for allowing me to step into this position. It's been an interesting ride, and I wouldn't have missed it for the world. I would also like to do one more thank you, though, to my husband, who has been my #1 support for all this time.
And one more minute. I think Sarah has something she'd like to say as well.
Just first and foremost, I wanted to express my profound gratitude for the opportunity to serve for the last 17 months as a governing board member. Gratitude for County Superintendent Tim Carter and his wisdom to select and entrust me to carry out the duties with no agenda, simply a heart of service. Gratitude to my fellow board members for modeling how to engage in respectful and productive meetings and discussions. Gratitude for PUSD leadership, teachers, staff, for the professionalism and competency, and the clear love for the students that make this role not just easier but more joyful. Gratitude for our community for their polite and valuable input related to PUSD and education. And not least of all, gratitude for the children and young adults of Prescott who represent our future and inspire me every day to be my best self and to represent the academic excellence possible from public education. While I'm deeply saddened and disappointed that I will not be continuing to serve on this board for the next 2 years, I'm proud to have campaigned and served with integrity. I'm proud to have brought a unique to the board and valuable perspective. And I'm proud to have communicated and modeled what it means to be a lawful, graceful, and effective governing board member. Upon reflection, honestly, I have concern for our hometown's local and nonpartisan elections. I have concern for our ability to thoughtfully work together to prioritize issues related to public education. And I have concern for our ability to continually remind ourselves and recognize how important and embedded PUSD is in our town, how the health of the schools is directly connected to the health of our community. That said, I'm incredibly hopeful that Prescott values will prevail. I'm hopeful that the board will continue just fine without me and will operate from a place of humility and service. That the next right thing for me personally and for our district will become self-evident, and confident that these things are way bigger than any one of us as individuals and therefore more cushioned from the bumps in the ride. That PUSD will remain as strong as ever in the ability to push academic excellence for every child every day. Thank you.
Kelsey Secor, our Director of Instructional Support, will present the instructional minute.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here with you tonight to talk a little bit more about instruction and what's happening in our district. There is a lot happening when it comes to instruction right now, and we shared a little bit of that with you last time when we talked about our curriculum and about standards-based learning and standards-based grading. Tonight, what I want to talk to you about is a training that we actually got to participate in yesterday. So we had math teachers here at the district office, but where that came from was Renee Steingraber and I, we were looking at data, trying to figure out where we were with math and what we could do to help our teachers improve. And we really wanted to target and pinpoint what were some areas where we needed to grow and what could we do a lot better in. And so we met with the director of psychometrics, say that a couple times fast, it's not easy, at the state, who was great and gave us some insight. And she said, really look at the depth of knowledge for the standards and make sure that your teaching aligns with what those standards expect. And so this marries really well with the standards-based learning that we are talking about and that the process that we are starting with our K-4 teachers. And so we brought our K-12 math teachers together yesterday with a couple trainers from ADE just to primarily talk about depth of knowledge and how do we support that depth of knowledge with our math standards. So you can see yesterday here was the group that we had. It was a great afternoon. I know Marty can attest, she got to sit in there with us. But we got to kind of be math nerds yesterday and really get into the math piece. So it's nice to have a lot of people in there who have the same kind of thoughts. So depth of knowledge. What that is there's different levels to learning. And so this is one of the ways that this is described. So you can see level 1 is all about recall. It is basic memorization. You are restating or retelling something that's already there. Level 2 is all about the skills and the concepts. So here are some of the verbs that you can see that go along with that. Level 3 is about strategic thinking. And then level 4 is about extending that thinking. And so when we talked about the learning progressions that we're working on with K-4 currently, this is along those lines of what we're looking at. So we're continuing to increase the rigor within what is being taught. So I'll give you an example of one of our math standards. So this is a second grade numbers-based 10 standard. So you can see it's all about fluently adding and subtracting within 100 using strategies based on place value, properties of addition, and or the relationship between addition and subtraction. So this seems pretty complicated, especially when you're talking about, this is for second graders, but this is verbiage and language for adults. So as adults, we would take this language and simplify it for our second graders. But what this is really asking is basically just be able to add and subtract using a variety of strategies. So you can use any of those strategies that are up there. So students who can do this can do all of the following. This would actually be a level 1, possibly a level 2, depending on how you teach it and what level you expect. So the level of rigor within this standard is not very high, and that's okay. Some of standards have to be building blocks for other pieces that we work towards. So I'll give you some examples of what this looks like. So DOK1, if you're teaching to that, you're going to ask students to find the sum of 44 plus 27. This would be standard algorithm. They would do this in a way where it's all about that procedure. However, in a lot of cases, we want them to go past that procedure, especially when we're talking about math. Level 2. Does it require interpretation? Do you have to make comparisons? Do you have to use relationships? And are there multiple steps needed in order to solve that problem? So here, if students were to try and solve this problem using numbers from 1 to 9, there's a lot of problem solving and trial and error that's going to go into this. And mind you, this is for second graders. They can do it. They can absolutely do this. So this would be a level 2. Level 3. Does it require justification? Do you have to provide proof and rationale for this? And do you have to have some sort of strategy to make it happen? So here, you can see it gets a lot more complicated because you have no numbers there to work with. You have to come up with this on your own. And the goal is to find the largest sum. Again, there's a lot of thought, and they're going to be using a lot of skills that they've already developed in order to make this happen. And then jumping to a level 4, it's at least a level 3, but again, then they have to make connections. So same task that they did for the level 3, but now they need to explain and justify how you could turn this into a subtraction problem. So they're making connections between concepts here at level 4. So this is just one example of some of the work that we were doing. But with those math teachers, we had them look at standards and actually a progression from kindergarten to 4th or 5th grade, and find out what the level of knowledge is for each of those. And it's not as easy as it sounds. It takes a lot of conversation and a lot of work, but we're in the process of starting to make sure that our instruction matches what the standards are asking us to do. So it's actually really fun work because then we get to look at what are the strategies, what are the instructional strategies and concepts we can bring in to help support that. So that is our next step. We're going to be bringing the trainers back from ADE, and they're going to be talking to us about how do we assess for proficiency and how do we assess fluency. Because fluency is not just a bunch of math facts on a paper. It's a lot more complicated. There's a lot more to it. So this is some of the work that we are doing, but I'm very excited. Our teachers are very excited about this, and it's great conversation. So are there any questions about depth of knowledge or any of the work that we're doing with math?
We're always happy when you're looking at math.
It's fun. As a former math teacher, I think it's fun. And I would not have said that as a student, but somehow I became a math person. So,
Okay.
all right. Thank you guys.
Kelsey, one question that I had. How does this relate to the standards-based evaluation system that we were presented at the last board meeting?
Great question. So I'm going to bring you back to this slide. So when we're talking about a learning progression, so exactly what we did with this standard, we're going to do with every single one of our priority standards. So we will look at what is a level 1 for that standard, what's a level 2, what's a level 3, what's a level 4. So we want to make sure that we know each one of those pieces so that we can meet kids wherever they're at. And we know if they are currently a level 1, we're going to continue to work with them to get them up to wherever that standard is asking us to be, which most of the time is a level 3. The beauty of that is we're going to have that laid out for children so they can look at that and they can read it and they can self-assess. Oh, I know this. I can do this. Here's what I want to work towards next. So it'll be very clear for teachers so they know exactly what's next, what they need to do to either go back and read or fill in some gaps or to extend that knowledge for kids who are ready for that next level.
Okay. So the teaching progression would be we're starting with level 1 skills.
Yes.
There's going to be some students that are above that.
Correct.
And they can hopefully be identified and move forward. And then,
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, for example, if you had a second grade classroom, you're going to have some students who can do this already.
Yeah.
Which is great because they need this to move on to the level 2.
Okay.
So you're going to know exactly where students are in their learning for each one of those standards. It'll be very clear for teachers and very clear for students.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Thanks, Kelsey.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the summary of current events.
Okay.
Mr. Superintendent?
Well, first, I have a very exciting introduction for you all tonight. And maybe you were following our exceptional student service director search over the past months. And we found a good one. His first day was today. He's with us today in the back. Please welcome Dr. Apollos Harris. He hung out with us today and all the principals and the district leadership team meeting, and that's an incredible group. And he did great in there. And so we're very excited. You're going to hear lots from him in the future right here at this podium, and we think we got one of the best you can find. So stay tuned. Anybody see this weekend? This is at the parade downtown. We had Abaya Judd representing. I see some Abaya Judd folks in the crowd. We had our bands down there. We had people at the courthouse lighting, and lots of PUSD representation as always. And then on this coming Friday is Acker. So we will also have lots of our students and our staff and people singing and playing instruments for you. So come on downtown Prescott to the Christmas City, and you'll see a lot of PUSD folks down there. So just want to thank everyone who is involved in all of that. This is a slide from our PUSD Visionary Committee. This is the committee tasked with coming up with a conceptual possible high school in the future, and that also requires taking a look at our whole district and reconfiguring and making sure everybody fits where all that goes, and bringing a great idea to the board at some point to chew on and think about. There are 35 people on that committee, great representation of the community. It was just a really neat group of people. We met on, November 17th for our first meeting. And lots of that was the, what's it called, Clark? MEDI. So lots of questions that you can answer on little polls on your phone, and then they create these Wordles. So we have, I don't know, maybe 15 of these Wordles. And the group that we're working with, the architectural group, will come back on Thursday. We'll have another meeting at Prescott High School in the library to take a look at next steps on this and start to look at the data we gathered from that group and start to put it together into these concepts. So there will be stops along the way where we invite the public to come and listen and comment, and we will certainly update the board often. But it's a very exciting project to be a part of. So there's quite a few people in this room that are involved in that, so I want to thank you. We'll keep you posted. These are our kiddos, and they're embarking on a wheelchair basketball piece. And I want to quote our physical therapist, Amy McVickers, who made this happen and got this equipment for them. The smiles on these faces are beyond exciting. And so what we're doing is we're working with Arizona Adapted Water Sports for sports equipment and a focus on skill development, team building, transition planning, and lifelong health and wellness. It's super fun to watch the amazing work these kids do. We'll keep you posted on that as well as it develops. And then finally, a real kudo for PUSD here. We were awarded the highest award. This is a platinum award from the Arizona Department of Education and others for the Farm Fresh Challenge. And that was submitted by our school coordinator, our farm to school coordinator, Sarah Reville. You've seen her in here multiple times if you've been here often. And then our Southwest Foods Excellence Director, Amy Siegler. And we're very excited about this, and you'll be seeing us kind of celebrate this around town. So lots going on, lots of great things going on in PUSD.
Thank you. Governing board, anybody have?
I was at Lincoln Elementary this morning, and they were outside doing a science lesson, a third grade class, and one of the kids said it was the best day ever.
That's awesome. Love that.
That's good. Stan, did you have something?
Yeah, we lost a member of our community this week, Elaine Hicks, member of the Taylor Hicks family, granddaughter. She was a 1979 student body president, Miss Hossie Yamper. And all of her, in lieu of flowers, all of her donations are going to the Can Do Award. So we'll be receiving those.
Thank you.
I was able to attend a couple of committee meetings in the last couple of weeks. One was the Visioning Committee with the large group of people from the community interested in that. And then the Student Wellbeing Committee just this last week, which has quarterly meetings. I thought some really good suggestions and ideas came out of that. It was a really valuable meeting, I think, and really highlighted the good things that are going on to help support our students in the schools, and hopefully some new things that will be coming along as well. So
Good. Anything else? This is December, so there will be a number of events coming up this month, so keep an eye on them and see if there's anything that you would like to attend. Ladies.
this way. It's fine. Okay, so I'm going to update on the athletics, specifically for the high school, because that's what we know the most about. For football, they just ended their season after facing Snowflake an away game on November 25th. And then the soccer team, boys and girls, have started their first game against Cactus. Basketball has their first game against Cortez. And there's going to be wrestling at Lee Williams. And PHS hosted the Alliance Boys Soccer Tournament on Saturday, December 3rd.
I have miscellaneous. Recently, band, orchestra, and jazz concert. Oh, not recently. Band, orchestra, and jazz have a concert on Thursday, December 8th. So come out to that, support our jazz. Cash for College Night was yesterday. It's basically an opportunity where future college goers get to experience what money they can have for scholarships and find places that donate. Anyway, it's really cool. And then blood drive was today at the high school. Final exams are coming up at the high school, Monday, December 19th, and end on the 21st. There's still an exemption for 85% or above, which is really nice. Yeah. And then, do you want to do holiday?
Yeah, so just to celebrate Christmas and the upcoming winter season, there's obviously going to be a break, which is from December 22nd to January 4th. And then within the last week, we've had the Christmas Carol play at PHS, which was from December 1st through the 3rd at Ruth Street Theater, which I hope you guys made it out to. I didn't get to see, but there was really good advertising for it, so yeah, it was good.
Thank you, ladies. All right, the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about anything on the consent agenda? Hearing none, could I get a motion, please?
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I would like to just point out that we had nearly 40,000 in various types of donations this month, one of which was a, let me find it here, $35,000 donation from the estate of Curtis Allen Porter. So anyway, we certainly appreciate all of those gifts. We also would like to thank the PUSD Education Foundation for their awards that were given out this week. So thank you.
Can I add one onto that?
Yep.
It's not listed on here, but APS and the local community in Darla DeVille have put together a school drive, a school supply drive every year where they give supplies to all the districts in the area. And they donated a truckload of supplies that since my brother works there, I was able to pick those up and bring them to the Family Resource Center. And it was a lot. It was a lot of stuff, and we're really happy that APS has been such a good partner with us in the community. So I just wanted to add that on to this part.
All right. We'll move on now to the study and voting session. And the first item on the study and voting session is to consider approving the date for the January PUSD Governing Board meeting. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, the only thing to point out about that is typically we will approve a whole calendar for a whole year, and we thought we'd hold that off for the incoming school board in January. So they kind of have a say of when and how they do that. And so we just asked this board to just approve that one meeting where they first meet and have their organizational meeting.
Comments or questions? Okay, could I get a motion, please?
I'll move we consider approving Tuesday, January 10th, 2023 as the PUSD Governing Board's first regular study and voting session meeting for the year of 2023 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve Tuesday, January 10, 2023, as the PUSD Governing Board's first regular study and voting session meeting for the year 2023 as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Is there a time on there? 5
Um,
o'clock still?
I'm assuming it would still be 5 o'clock,
5 o'clock.
since we haven't
Should we
changed
add
it. Okay.
That's what the new board can look at that timing too as well, and consider if it works still.
All right. The next item on our agenda is taking a look at proposed or recommendations for a superintendent succession process. We have 2 requests to speak on this item. The first request is from Whitney Williams, who is representing the Prescott Education Association.
Hello, Board. So I'm president of Prescott Education Association, and we've polled our members for their thoughts and how they would like to influence or give some maybe philosophical direction to looking for a new superintendent. So we would like you to definitely look nationally within the state and within our own district for a candidate that truly lives and breathes Prescott values. We have a wonderful district here with so much fabulous things and things to offer. We would love someone to replace it that will handle it with care, yet also look critically at it to make it better. We ask that your search committee has at least 2 Prescott Education Association certified teachers on it, and that you have 2 PEA classified members as well to make sure we're including all aspects of the workforce. And then in addition to that, PEA members aren't the only teachers in the district, so that you also have teachers who are not PEA members represented as well. We would like for you to prioritize diversity in the process and really make sure that all perspectives and backgrounds are looked at, especially special education resource teachers. So we want you to make sure that you elect a superintendent who prioritizes inclusion and is willing to make sure that our district's budget financially supports that as well. We ask that when the committee narrows it down to a top 3 candidate, or however the process occurs, that a public forum is held for people to voice their concerns, yet also hear what these candidates really do feel and breathe. There's a lot that I think can be shown in a public forum. Also, please make sure that you survey all teachers and staff and give opportunities for input, yet if this district runs the committee as they have other hiring processes, that will be definitely included.
Whitney.
Sorry. I forgot about the timer.
Thank you. Our other speaker on this item is Andy Nelson, who is speaking as an individual.
Thank you, Board. Actually, my comments are similar in many ways, so thank you, Whitney, for that. And it's great that Dr. Harris is here, because I kind of used you as an example as part of this. So on November 16th, the Courier reported the following. The Prescott Unified School District this week hired a longtime special education teacher, trainer, director, and university professor from Ohio as the district's new Director of Exceptional Services. Congratulations. A 12-member search committee earlier trimmed 6 applicants to 3 finalists, including 2 PUSD candidates, Christine Felton, the Prescott Mile High Middle School Special Education Department Chairman, and Maya Caldwell, the PUSD Grants Director, and a former special education teacher. The 3 finalists were then interviewed by the district administrative team, and Dr. Paulos of Ohio emerged as a choice to be hired to replace 7-year Director Terry Gorman, who is retiring in December. I think you would all agree that this process was valuable for selecting the right person for the job, and included both qualified district employees and an outsider whose qualifications in this particular scenario were superior. In fact, District Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources Clark Tenney said in a news release, "It was a very difficult decision to choose between 3 diverse and incredible skill sets. In my time as an education leader, I have not been part of a longer and more thoughtful deliberation process." I'm glad to hear of such a thorough deliberation process for such a key employee hire. My comment this evening, with all respect, is that I certainly hope and believe that the public expects a similar diverse and thoughtful superintendent succession and deliberation process to compare and contrast candidates when governing board will be selecting a new district superintendent. I'll stop there. I had a little bit more, but that's okay.
10 more seconds, go.
Oh, again, I respect and appreciate the superintendent's succession plan and any who are qualified to fulfill that role, including my friend Clark Tenney. Okay, that's my 10 seconds.
Thanks, Andy.
Perfect stop.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Andy. All right, at this point, I am going to make a motion, and then that will open it to the floor for discussion. Okay? The motion is, I move that we forward a recommendation for a superintendent succession plan to the 2023 Prescott Unified School District Governing Board as presented. Could I get a second?
Do you have copies of the plan again?
It was sent out with the board packet.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Will a second
It won't take
require
us
us
to a vote. No, it will not take
Okay.
us
You
to a
can
vote.
sit on that and discuss.
Okay.
Would deem appropriate. Why bother making a recommendation? Our new board is going to be made up of a majority of people who have not served on the board prior to this point. This plan, or some version of it, would give the new board time to develop an understanding of the district and its needs. The reason I feel so strongly about this, when I came onto the board, when I ran for the board, I had been attending board meetings for the entire time I was considering running for the board. I belonged to the oversight committee for the bond and override that we had, so I had an opportunity to learn something about the various financial aspects of the district. And believe it or not, I am fully qualified to be a superintendent in the state of Arizona. I don't want to be, but I am qualified. I figured coming in that I was going to hit the deck running, and I knew what I needed to know. I didn't. It took me the better part of a year to truly understand how the district worked, what its needs were, and so forth. That's why I believe it's so important for the new board to take the time to get to know those things before they try to jump into such a massive project as a superintendent hire. I think if they adopt at least parts of these recommendations, it would give the board time to look at the needs of the district, to gather input from broad-based groups, which I'm hearing certainly is a desire, and decide what they want in a superintendent. Different people bring different skills, and if we don't know what we want, we aren't going to get it. It would also give them time to study options in how to look for this person. Do you want a search firm that will do a full national search and find out what they do, how they operate, what they cost, etc.? Or do you want to put out an ad nationally, statewide, whatever, and look in that way. Do you want to start with a district notice? I mean, any of those are possibilities, and I think it's good to take time to really consider what your options are for that process. Finally, it would give the board time to look at timing and any potential issues that may be wrapped up in all this, such as availability of appropriate candidates. So those are my reasons why I believe this is valuable. So I will happily open it at this point to other comments and thoughts.
Madam President, I think that my only concern is the timeline. To have such a defined timeline like we have. I'm personally okay with the top 3 dates. That gets us to the board negotiates contract. Well, that's not what I'm okay with. Hang on. I'm okay with the interim superintendent gradually assumes, because the interim piece, I think, is fine. I think we have to have an interim in order for us to do an extensive search. It puts us in the timeline for a school year, for one, and we know that most of our candidates will come out of a regular school year cycle. I think that to define the search timeline is really where we really need to hinge all this on, and that would actually include or occur during the spring of 2023. I think that we should talk about the contract with the interim through July 1st. And then that, if we do decide that another superintendent does come on board, which another superintendent would be coming on board, then that's when the contract would start. I just don't think we should be so definitive in those last 3 bullets, for one.
Dan, I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought, but we just put the wrong one up there. That's not the one in the packet.
Yeah,
That's the one I have.
there have been changes to that already
have that one,
prior
too?
to this meeting.
We'll get it up there, and I think it's in the packet if you
And
have
I
it. Read ahead.
help to alleviate some of the
Okay.
concerns.
Some of my concerns, I think, are, well, there's various concerns, I think, with, if the next board wants to do this quickly, we need to get on the boat or get on the stick and get a search firm hired immediately. If we want someone during the time frame that a superintendent is available in the coming year, which would be typically the summer time frame, national search to be done. If we're doing a national search, that would require it to be started today, pretty much. We would have to get a search firm on board and doing that, because for a number of reasons. I don't know if the board is the best, if we are best equipped to do that, and the next board, I don't know if they will be best equipped to do it. If our assistant superintendent of human resources is a candidate, that person cannot be running this search. So we have a number of factors that have to be considered if the next board wants to move this along into a July start time frame of a new nationally sought out candidate. I think this plan gives us the flexibility to look at an interim appointment and let the board get our feet under us, let us figure out timelines, processes, all of the public input, teacher input programs that we will need to have. No matter what we do, we're going to need to have those things in place. And I think the timeline on this plan helps us get to that. But it would require an interim appointment. And it does push the full-time non-interim superintendent out to the following year at some point in time, because just the timing of it. If we're lucky, maybe it would allow us to bring someone in mid-year, but I'm not sure that that's the best decision to make, is to bring a new superintendent into the system mid-year. So I support the timeline on this. I think from a logistics standpoint, it makes it better for the next board. I also feel that we're the elected board and done with it, but I don't know if that's the right thing. From what I'm hearing from the community and the emails I've received, the input from our speakers today, that a national search is the best way to go. I think that requires us to be deliberate and thoughtful in this and to take some time to get it done, which then also requires an interim superintendent. The other side of that is cost-wise. I think it eliminates an immediate and high-level cost that we would be paying for a national search firm right away, and allows us to look at the best options to how to conduct that search and get the most out of our money when we do spend that on a search firm. So that's where I feel the timeline fits on this new document that's in our packet.
I just am wondering if, you say it's tentative, if we adopt it, it's still tentative, so the dates could change and the whole process could change if.
It's non-binding.
Non-binding at all if the new board puts out a search and finds someone in.
Yeah, it's strictly
3
a
weeks,
recommendation
then that
to the
does
new
away
board.
with the interim altogether, right? If, you know, you find somebody right away? Yeah?
Yeah, if the
What's
next
that?
board wants to do that, I'd say yes.
I'm just asking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you're
I
on
say
the-
they,
so, yeah.
the next board could decide this is junk and we're moving on.
Okay. Yeah, I think one of the problems was just in the way it was presented. Just kind of chunked it at us. So I'm feeling a little bit better about an interim. I think Clark would be good. He's assistant superintendent. Marty, why didn't you step up?
Well, full
No.
disclosure, I would be honored to be the interim, but I will be retiring June 24. I will not be applying for the full-time position. And also, I would expect compensation as an interim superintendent, so I would want you to know that too.
I got you. So I'm feeling better, knowing that it's just like a safety net. Like
Yes.
if the board, if we decide to look for someone and it's not going well, we have a safety net in place, so the school will not fall apart. If I look at it like that, I think I'm okay.
Other comments?
After looking at these bullets, again, I just think that we omit the last 3 bullets altogether. We talk about the interim superintendent, we address that, I've seen it work very well to have an interim. I think that's good practice, and Clark is the best candidate we have by far. He's already been filling those shoes because Joe's been out on the ocean too much. Which is
Only on off days of school, off days.
I know. So I think that's great practice. I've also seen this where this whole search go 2 ways. You either really, with the candidates that come forward, either those that run locally really show how strong they are against national candidates, or we get a very sound candidate. I mean, look at Humboldt and Dan Streeter. He was in the same position And he remained at Humboldt and became a very good superintendent. And then we've had it go the other way. So I think it's just great practice. But I think that if we're going to look at this, it gets a little bit complicated when we have interim superintendent at the beginning, and then when we look at the spring board negotiates contract with interim superintendent, it doesn't define exactly who that is, right? We're assuming either it's Clark now as interim superintendent or it's a new superintendent. So I just think that you just leave it as it is with the first 3 bullets and don't define any more for the new board.
Would you like to recommend that we amend it by eliminating those last 3 bullets?
And let them decide, let us
Yep.
decide kind of where
Yep.
we're at.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm remembering from our last meeting, part of what we talked about is that Clark would assume the duties gradually without any pay compensation increase.
Until
And
July.
so by omitting those last 3 bullets, I'd be curious if Clark would still be interested in doing that without having that contract negotiation clearly outlined and defined for July 1.
Yeah, great point. The way that I see this is 1 July is when the new, whoever it is, superintendent would be, because Joe is still the superintendent until October, correct? And so whoever is chosen is an interim, whoever it is, nationally or Clark or whoever, right?
Well, or oftentimes the superintendent will move into a transition position and work with that new superintendent.
Right.
I think,
So if we found one really soon, the new one would be the interim that would work with you.
Right. So that'd be a new contract.
yeah, and I don't know that you would even call that person an interim. You could.
It would be the
They could be
superintendent.
the superintendent.
That's right.
And I think that's one of the major decision points, and you guys are really outlining all of the major decision points so well. But I think one of your major decision points is, you want to have this wrapped up by July 2023? Or do you want to have continuity and do a full search and have one for July 2024? And there's time to make that decision
Yeah.
with these ideas.
Yeah.
All right. Stan has requested we amend this by dropping the last 3 bullets. Is there a second for that?
I think you might as well keep Joe Howard's last contract day on there as a bullet point.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Yeah, that won't hurt anything.
Yeah.
It's not changing.
I don't really have a problem with it. Taking this into consideration, could we do the spring 2023 board negotiates contract with interim
Slash new
new
superintendent.
superintendent? Would that work for you?
You could put "or" in there. Is that kind of what you're getting at, Carr?
Yeah. So it's not stating it
Mm-hmm.
specifically. Interim, and then wherever it says interim.
Interim or new.
superintendent or-
That allows the continuing board, the next board, to decide, is it going to be 2023 July or 2024?
Well, and they could look at where the process is at that point.
Yeah, we determine the process. You know, again, it's after the spring 2023, the whole process is, the new board is figuring it out. I just don't think we need to be so concrete, is where I'm at.
So basically, I think you're saying that that designation, whether it's an interim or a new superintendent, could be after July 1st, depending on what the next board decides they want to do.
Yeah, they determine the process.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it's understood, but I'll just point out, it's July 1st is the start date for superintendents.
Yep.
You might find one that wants to start in October or November, but it's not likely.
So
So-
to that point, then perhaps you leave the last 2 bullet points and just, yeah, leave the last 2 bullet points in the first 3.
Oh, yeah, I hear what you're saying.
So you're talking about taking out the 4th bullet point.
Or could we just remove those dates and leave that to say, in the,
With no date at it.
yeah,
Where it just says spring.
negotiates a contract with the interim or new superintendent. Dates
And
TBD.
period.
Yeah.
You comfortable with that?
I am very comfortable with that.
All right.
So what does, I mean, there's a step in here, and maybe this is an obvious question, an obvious answer to other people, but at what point is the decision made that Clark Tenney is the interim superintendent that gradually assumes superintendent duties starting January 1? In other words, are we making that decision at this point as our suggestion?
I think as presented, that is our recommendation, but I believe that should be the choice of the new board to finalize that.
So then January 1 is probably not when that person gradually
No,
assumes
no.
duties. It
I-
would
and I
probably be
think-
January 7th.
You know, maybe we say winter to spring 2023 on that second bullet.
Yeah, I just see that, you know, your first, so the rationale, you already have, number 4, recommending Clark
Yeah.
Tenney. I mean, that's what I would be approving in the motion, and you all have worked with Clark. He's sound. We know he's gonna be a great interim in that position. And this district has had a grow your own foundation for years, and we are grooming people to absolutely be the best administrators, the best teachers, and Clark is part of that. I mean, he epitomizes that. So why wouldn't we do that? And you know him better than any of us, so this shouldn't even be a new board decision. I personally like where you're at with the recommendation of Clark.
The only where I'm coming from with this, honestly, is I'm hearing both a call for a rigorous and thorough national search, and Clark is competent and has worked really hard in this district, and we think that he would make a very wonderful interim superintendent. All of us agree that having an interim helps provide that bridge and that stability, regardless of who that person is. But in this particular case, Clark is the person we are outlining for that because of his experience specific to PUSD. And I'm not saying we can't have the best of both worlds, but how much money are we going to throw at a national search and also encourage and support Clark in that homegrown Prescott value? You know, obviously there will be time for input from everyone, and I think if we're moving forward, or if we're recommending that we would like to see Clark as an interim superintendent on some timeline, we should get input from our community and how they feel about him in that role before voting to make him the interim. And so maybe that's before the January 6th meeting or whatever, but.
January 10th.
Thank you. We just voted on it. I wasn't paying attention because I didn't put it on my calendar.
All right, I'm going to give you what I've got right now. All right, as far as the timeline, the first bullet will remain the same because we're right here doing it, okay? The second bullet, what I have is starting January, but no specific date, 2023, interim superintendent Clark Tenney gradually assumes superintendent duties, remembering that this is a recommendation, not a job offer. I think that in January, the new board then could decide whether they want to approve that. The next,
Can I make one comment?
yeah, absolutely.
Isn't the assistant superintendent, that's what you are, right? So you have assistant superintendent, isn't he already prepared to assume the superintendent's duties? Like,
Like when I'm out on the ocean?
yeah. I mean, do we even need that bullet point? Isn't it obvious that the assistant superintendent's gonna know what the superintendent does? Or is that not obvious? Do you keep things from the assistants?
We'll keep things rocking and rolling no matter what you decide here tonight. But I think the community's looking for direction from the board. I mean, that's why I put my resignation in a year early, so y'all could make some decisions about what you want the timing to look like. But will we keep things rocking and rolling no matter what? Yep. We got the team to do it.
Yeah.
I think we have the capability to do that without necessarily, at this point, saying anyone is the interim superintendent. I mean, we're just talking at this point, but I think that leaves the next board the opportunity in January to start this discussion about process and timeline. So whether that means that an interim is appointed after January 10th, but maybe before February 15th, that could be the process. But if we go like we're proposing and the interim is the person in place now, then I don't know that the gradually assuming superintendent's duties has to be written out necessarily, because that's going to happen. Does that make sense?
It might help to formalize it.
Yeah, I do feel that's a valuable piece of this, to designate that. And certainly, we could just say, starting January 2023, the interim superintendent gradually assumes superintendent duties and leave the name off, but I think without making a designation of the title interim superintendent, it's unfair to expect Clark to take on additional duties in that regard without being designated in that position.
Right. And I guess I would say I would hate to, again, this is a recommendation, but I would hate to put that on an individual and then have a board with 3 new members come in and say, nope, we're not doing that. Sorry, in December we told you were going to have this role, and now you're not. I think all the human resources that I was able to do in the years of my career, we always kept the individual's name out of it. It was a position. It wasn't, and I don't say this in an insulting way to anyone, because I have the highest respect for Clark. But this is a position, and I think we need to think of it in that way at this point. And there is the variable that the next board could come in and pull this rug out from under us. So I just feel more comfortable knowing that this is the recommendation, but not stating specifically that we're saying you should do this way or that. That gives me a little bit of heartburn based on the feedback I've received from the community. Again, if I didn't care about that, I would say let's just move ahead and do this and be finished with it. But that is feedback I've received, and so.
But the name's all over that. I mean, I guess I just, like, I hear you. It is about a position, and the reality is, if Clark does assume the role of interim superintendent, he will be poised in a way to to a great advantage or disadvantage, depending on the sink or swim philosophy, but to then qualify and apply for the superintendent job. And so I think that's where it's important to communicate clearly so that we can get that feedback from the community, from teachers, from staff, from community members, from parents as to, is this the person that we want in the interim role? And I still think that this board, I mean, I feel comfortable recommending Clark for that role. I just think we need to communicate clearly that that's what we're recommending, especially because it is the first step on the timeline. Yeah.
I think, to state the obvious, the idea of an interim is someone that's going to be here beyond these decisions, regardless, for the continuity. And Clark has told us that in public meetings, and you could probably ask him again right now. But I've heard Clark in a very classy way say it's win-win for him. You know, if we can find someone who's more qualified and ready to do this, Clark is happy with where he's at. I won't speak for Clark, but I've heard him say this several times. If the community and the board decides that he's the guy, he's ready to go for that. And he's been here dedicated and showed us all those things. But that's the part that we're all hearing the community say. The community wants a voice, they want some input. That's always, it's key, it's important no matter what. An interim piece is buying time so that we can, if something unforeseen comes, if the price of searches goes up 200% next month, you know, I mean, stuff that we don't know in the future, that we have a plan to carry us through that. And so I would just caution that we get tied to thinking that if you make a decision to make someone an interim, that it's not asking people's opinions, or it's not, it's circumventing the process or some kind of conspiracy. I would say not at all. I think this board the whole time and through the retreat, and the reason that I resigned so early was to give people the time to think about how to do this and provide the most continuity and not miss any steps. You can do that if you create enough time to do it.
If this board is actually going to make a recommendation, it has to be something firm. It can't be just, well, we recommend that eventually you decide what you want to do and hire a new superintendent. That's not a recommendation. Okay, let's think in terms of what really constitutes a recommendation.
But if you're allowing the board to go back to those bullets, to, you know, I mean, you would probably talk about this every meeting from here until when this is done.
I expect.
We would probably have retreats. We would bring experts in to tell us how the process works. In fact, we have one lined up who's on that wall that used to be a board president, who is offered for free to come in because she loves PUSD on January 10th, if we so wish, to tell us how the process works. She was a superintendent search consultant for many years. Joanne Hildy's her name, and she's would come for free. So there's so much research that you all need to do to look into how you want to do this the best and to honor what we've heard tonight and what the community is asking to do. But I think the whole idea here is that we make a decision to provide some continuity through that process. And I think my main point here is this. This board's not going to have any say in June, or July, if that bullet point stands, where we go, that's a big decision point where we go, okay, where are we at on this? Do we have somebody that we want to hire, or do we want to offer Clark a one-year contract? That's how it started for me. I got a one-year contract, and I had to show my stuff, or I was out. So you could do a 6-month contract if you want. There's a lot of options.
Go ahead and continue with your changes that you had. Sorry.
Well, all right. So for the second bullet, I'll go back to starting January 2023. The interim superintendent gradually assumes superintendent duties.
Is that Clark?
Well, we've covered that in bullet point 4 up above.
Yeah.
And so, but that would be the decision of the new board. Then for the third bullet point, just leave that as is, where the determines the process and timeline. Then on spring 2023, board negotiates contract with interim or new superintendent, period. Took out bullet point number 5 and left bullet number 6 unchanged.
I agree with those changes.
I don't necessarily agree with the omission of bullet point number 5 because I think that we established that that is the desired and typical start time of a superintendent.
Well, I'm remembering that if we get to there and the board isn't ready to make that decision, they don't have to.
So we can make a one-year contract?
Yes, oh yes, you could.
Okay. So,
You'd have to find somebody willing to take a one-year contract.
gotcha.
You could offer one.
And
A new person would probably not be interested.
Correct.
that fifth bullet could also say interim or new superintendent starts contract.
Maybe say summer 2023 as
Okay,
opposed to a
yeah.
date specific. Realizing that we know fiscal years begin July 1st, and
Yeah.
July 1st is the date. I mean, just as a board, we need to understand that, but maybe saying summer gives us more flexibility,
Yeah,
or gives the next board more flexibility. Does that make,
though they have total flexibility in
they do. They do.
I am feeling that we do need to keep the continuity. Some people are, I've heard, are not super cool with the status quo, like to keep it going, but that's changes that need to be done in the future. We need to have some type of, so that the teachers and staff know that we're going to continue. So and then the board can make changes slowly as they feel would help the students and the community. So I was the stick in the mud before, but I'm okay. I'm okay with saying Clark Tenney will be the interim. Well, we'll learn the superintendent's roles through the next couple months. And if we, as a new board, pick someone else, if we get a new superintendent, then that's good. Or we can continue on with a contract for Clark Tenney, either in a interim or a one-year contract, all to be decided later. But I do feel, I see your pain in that we need to give the education community to say that we're going to continue in this method right now. We need to give them confirmation.
That the changes might take place more gradually than
Yes, that we're not gonna.
sudden cutoff.
Right, so that's,
Okay.
so I'm
Another
good.
another thing to consider in terms of wording is while we're appreciating the need for stability, I know that when this came up last time, there was a lot of knee-jerk reaction because it's not explicitly written on there that there will be time for community input. And I think we all assume and know that that is best practice and historic practice in key position searches, but perhaps that spring 2023 where the board determines process and timeline for filling a permanent superintendent position, maybe there's a way to put some words in there, a process and timeline that includes community input. Something to that effect. Because I know that out of context, these things can often be held up as, in the face of community
Take
input.
that out of context.
Yeah, majorly.
I'm going to read this set again.
Deb, can I put one more piece in there, and you can make this administrative if you need to? Clark Tenney's sticking his neck out on this. I don't know that people realize that, but there needs to be some assurances that if that it doesn't go that direction, that he goes back to his position, or there needs to be some assurances for his employment after the many years and the great leadership he's shown in this district over the years.
Yes, I would agree with that.
All right. So, again, bullet number 1 remains as is. Bullet number 2, starting January 2023, interim superintendent gradually assumes superintendent's duties. Spring 2023, board determines process/timeline for filling permanent superintendent position and gathers community and staff input.
Can we back that up to winter? I mean, we don't have to wait till spring.
No, you don't have to wait that long, but it's
Can we,
a placeholder there. I don't have it. I don't have a
Just so they don't
previous one that,
Just so they don't think winter means December,
Yeah.
if that's not the sense of the board.
Spring semester, right?
okay. I'll go back up to,
how about we just don't put any date there? We'll just put it as the next step.
board gathers community and staff input.
And process.
No timeline.
And they determine the timeline for filling the permanent.
You've confused me, Cara.
I like the whole sentence you said, just take the spring of 2023 out. Just put,
And not put a timeline on that at all.
yeah. It's like the next step. No?
I
Well, it is
personally
under
would
the
rather
category
give
timeline, so I was maybe like spring semester,
my-
2023?
Spring to me implies any time from February on. And I don't think they're going to get to it in January.
February to May.
Okay.
All right. Bullet point number 4, board negotiates, spring 2023, board negotiates contract with interim or new superintendent. We put bullet number 5 back in that just says summer interim or new superintendent starts contract. Joe Howard remains to support transition, and then the last one as is. Anybody with continuing concerns on that?
Andy, did you want to add anything about setting aside funds in this one yet, or do you just want to keep it under board determines timeline? process?
Again,
Well, the cost would be part of determining the process.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine. Okay,
and I think the next board needs to deal with that because it'll be that year's costs.
gotcha, okay.
That need to be figured.
I just don't want to forget about it.
Hearing nothing. Comments from peanut gallery?
Clark, have we stomped on your goodwill enough to?
Not at all. I appreciate you asking. Excuse me. I'll say what I said before. Joe paraphrased it really pretty well. As long as the board's decision serves the district well, I'm happy. And I'm happy to be a part of that. I'm one of the few people I think who would be willing to do it for just a year. You're probably not going to find outside candidates who will come and say,
No.
yeah, I'll move to Prescott and try, be tried on for a year for size and see what you think afterwards. I'm happy to do that. Whatever works best for the district. I'm pleased with. As Joe suggested, if you select me ultimately as the superintendent, you're going to get my best. And I think I'll do really good work for you and you'll see some good things. If you do a search process and you find somebody you feel would be an even stronger candidate, I love that too. I love this district to death. And if you feel like there's somebody with an even stronger skill set than me, great. I'm so ready to line up next to that person and say, what are we doing together? So either way works for me, and I think we'll do good things together. I think you're wise to, you've talked a little bit around the edges of getting some expert advice on a realistic time frame for this and a cost for this. It's not, in some ways, it was mentioned by members of the public, in some ways it parallels closely the processes that we have done for searching for an ESS director, SPED director, high school principal, high school music leader, things like that recently that have gone very well. You're exactly right. In some ways it's substantially different. And one is that it's going to cost you a bunch of money and take a bunch of time. Do you have the time for it in the time frame that you want? That's a question the next board will need to ask themselves. Are you willing to invest that money in an outcome that may be exactly what you would have if you didn't invest the money? That's what the next board needs to decide as well. But to answer your question, your thoughtful question, Carl, I appreciate that. I'm happy to do with whatever you decide. You haven't talked about anything yet that is outside of my comfort zone. If you say, well, let's have Clark stand outside without a coat for a couple of days, and say, I might raise my hand and say, that doesn't work for me. But everything you've talked about so far works for me just great.
Just a few words about Clark Tenney. He went through a rigorous process at Bayajud against some of the best candidates I've ever seen for principal, and he knocked it out of the park. And he called it Disneyland every day, and he did it for about 4 years, and I went over there one day and said, Clark, I need you at the high school. And he said, I love what I'm doing. And he said, and why? And we talked about it and explained it, and I said, that's why I need you over there. There's a culture piece we're working on over there, and we need your leadership over there. And he went from a principal to an assistant principal voluntarily because that's what the team needed. That's what we asked him to do. And he had some questions about it. It's a backwards move if you look at it in a lot of places. He didn't ask to do that. We asked him to do it. He did it. He went over there, worked beautifully with the team and made incredible things happen over there, was having a bunch of fun figuring everything out. And then I went over there and said, hey, Clark, I need to be at the district office. And he went, I'm having a blast over here. But here he is, and it's done everything that we asked him to do. If I went through a list of the things that he's done in the short 2 years that he's been in there in terms of salary schedules and just digging through that whole department and figuring out things that like stipends and all kinds of things that have for years needed to be fixed, that's the person that we're talking about. So for me, we are asking him to do that again. And so those are my thoughts on what Clark has shown with leadership in this district.
I just hope that this discussion is not seen in any way to denigrate Clark Tenney and what he's done. I don't want anybody feeling that or believing that. What we're deciding is a recommendation for a process to fill a position for the next board to take on. And this is going to be difficult and it's going to take a lot of time. And I just want everybody to understand that it's not going to be quick. If they want it to be quick, it's going to be expensive. And there's a lot of factors we have to consider. And so nothing we're saying is in any way a negative against Clark Tenney, because I believe he's an outstanding candidate for this position. But that's probably a discussion that needs to happen more in the committee that's going to be selecting our new superintendent. Then it should be right here, I guess.
I would like to withdraw my original motion and substitute a new motion with the changes. So I move that we forward a recommendation for a superintendent succession plan to the 2023 Prescott Unified School District Governing Board as follows. December 2022 board meeting to consider approval of a succession plan. Recommendation, sorry, I missed that. Starting January 2023, interim superintendent gradually assumes superintendent's duties. Spring 2023, board determines process/timeline for filling permanent superintendent position and gathers community and staff input. Spring 2023, Board negotiates contract with interim or new superintendent. Summer 2023, interim or new superintendent starts contract. Joe Howard remains to support transition. And finally, October 31, 2023, Joe Howard's last contract day.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt, that we forward a recommendation for the given superintendent succession plan to the 2023 Prescott Unified District Governing Board. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much, Board. I appreciate your thoughtful discussion. Motion passes. All right. Moving on. Thank you, Mr. Binder, for your supreme patience. Mr. Binder is here to request approval for a trip.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. I have a really cool opportunity for our kids at Mile High. Hopefully this is a little easier decision than that that last very important conversation, but hopefully it's much easier. So yes, we are, I'm here to provide you some information about the trip to Washington, D.C. And request permission to take our students over there. I have with me tonight Catherine Vandemark, one of our teachers, and also one of the people I've asked to help kind of lead and co-sponsor this. But I think you have a lot of the information in your packet, but a couple points I did want to just highlight for you before opening it to questions. One, yeah, this is going to be in the summer of 2023. And we have been actually taking our students to DC on this trip for literally decades. I don't know how many years exactly, but quite a while now. This year and the last several years, we've been using a company called World Strides. And one of the reasons we went with them is because we've had such success with them and working with them over the last several years. And again, Catherine's been working with them a lot the last few months to put a lot of these plans together. The trip will include all sorts of incredible stops, from memorials to museums to the Capitol and a whole lot more. And again, I think the full list is in your packet. But the exciting news we have is we're having 38 students who have signed up so far and are interested in going on this trip. That is almost double from the last trip, and now the last trip was during COVID, so it's a little understandable, but definitely a lot of interest right now in this trip. And even more exciting for me is we have, again, Catherine, and then we have two other amazing teachers. We have Ian Owens and Ryan James, who both have also volunteered to help chaperone this trip. So a lot of excitement around this. We love providing these opportunities for our kids. And if there's any questions, I don't know if you have anything you want to share just about the trip in general or the planning.
I think you mostly covered it. World Strides so far has been an absolutely excellent partner. They do a great job providing us as a school and a chaperone team with information to support students and parents, including with fundraising for the opportunity. So it's been a really smooth process so far, and we're just starting to pull all the nitty-gritty details together. But Mr. Binder kind of covered the main points, so happy to answer any questions.
Any questions anybody has for our Mile High people?
I just love that we have civic education. Thank you.
Is this similar to like it used to be called Close Up, I think? Okay. All right. Thanks.
Is there, so when you visit Arlington National Cemetery, are you going to witness the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and is that all on the tour? Is that part of it?
Yes.
Very important piece of history, and I think that's something tremendous that'll really stick in the students' minds once they get there. You know, if people haven't been to DC, you know, it seems like it's a huge place, but it's actually a postage stamp with all of these places in one consolidated area. So I commend you for doing this every year. I think it's tremendous, and every person should have the opportunity to go through this, and I appreciate you taking them to do it.
Anything else? Thank you, guys. Appreciate you waiting it out for your short little presentation.
Thank you.
Motion to approve an out-of-state travel request for Mr. Andy Binder, principal of Prescott Mile High Middle School, for students and chaperones to travel to Washington, D.C. from June 12th to June 16th, 2023, as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve an out-of-state travel request from Mr. Andy Binder, principal at Prescott Mile High Middle School, for students and chaperones to travel to Washington, D.C. from June 12 to June 16, 2023, as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, next item, we are on the second reading of some policy advisories. Marty, you want to?
Sure. We just have two policies that are being recommended, revisions to these policies. The first one is JLCB, immunization of students, and the regulation that goes with it. While the changes kind of appear substantial, really it's just a reorganization of the information, moving most of it into the regulation. Immunization requirements change pretty regularly at the legislature level, so this just makes it a little easier to update our policies when those changes come down. So really, you know, nothing new and exciting. It's all the same stuff. The vaccinations required to attend school, and then they also mentioned two that are not required, although there's way more than two that aren't required. And that includes COVID is not required, and the papillomavirus, human papilloma, whatever. So, however, there's tons more that aren't required, like shingles and flu and pneumonia, but they didn't list all those. So that's what JLCB is about. And then the change to the regulation for KDB, this has to do with public records requests. And what they're asking is that the district designate who those public records requests go to. And I think this is actually a really good idea because we get them sometimes. I'll get them, or Joe will get them, or Clark will get them, or IT. And so it's nice that we're going to designate who should receive that request. And we're going to suggest the admin assistant to the superintendent receive that request. And then the other changes, we have to respond within 5 days of that request, acknowledging receipt. Typically, we need a lot more than 5 days to respond, but at least we need to respond and let them know we received it. And there was some blanks on the cost for copying. I don't know if you noticed that, but we're recommending the same amount that's been in there for quite a long time, and that's 35 cents and 50 cents per page. Typically, our requests are electronic, so I would say most of the time we don't charge. It would be if we had to dig through hard copy records and make copies of that. Clark.
Kind of out of order here a little bit, I apologize. Can I ask a clarifying question, Marty, that some members of the public may be wondering? We talked about immunizations. Some people are like, well, of course, and for some people that's a hot button issue. Are there any immunizations that PUSD has that are not required, that are not based on state law, that are our own, hey, let's do this, let's do that? Do we have anything like that at all?
It's all based on state law.
Okay, so there's nothing here that we're proposing just on a local level?
We are not proposing to add anything extra beyond what the state requires.
Super, thanks.
I just have one concern about the first one with the vaccines. It seems like we're taking it from something that the board has to approve and moving it to something that's just a regulation that the board does not approve. So the big one is the COVID vaccine. If the state recommends it, is it going to come through the board again? Or since we're putting it into a regulation right now, it's not going to come back?
Well, you know, that's a good question. And what our practice has been is to bring regulation changes to the board as an FYI so that they have opportunity to comment and understand what we're recommending. Especially a hot button topic, like if the state said you now have to have COVID vaccines, I'm sure we would want to talk about that.
Yeah. And you
Okay,
guys
so
know,
it just seems-
sensitive topics, we don't bury, we bring to the board so that
Yeah.
everybody knows what we're doing.
But
It's a good point.
since it's-
Regulations
Since
can't.
it's a regulation, it would, I mean, we wouldn't vote on it though, as a
Right.
board. We would-
Correct.
You would just explain it to us and then we would have to go along with it. So that's what I'm getting
Well,
at.
but you
is-
could say, we think this should be a policy, bring it to the next meeting. And we'll continue to always bring regulations.
Yeah, so I just don't know if I want to make the vaccines go from a policy to a regulation. My only concern.
Other questions or comments? Is there a motion on this?
Can we break it into two?
I don't know. How does that work?
It would work within your motion. So you could make a motion that says, like, I'll vote on the first one and then vote on the second one, and then you can make another motion for the second one. That's one way you could do that.
Well, the second one is just a regulation change as well. So
They're both regulation changes.
there's 2 regulation changes and 1 policy change.
Okay.
Gotcha, thank you, Mark.
So it is the policy change on accepting the vaccines, right? That was my understanding.
So the policy change is that it moves a lot of that information into the regulation. There's really nothing new. It's based on state law. They're just moving it into the regulation.
But it's the vaccines that are required. Is moving into regulation?
Well, honestly, the policy does refer to the law, ARS 15873 immunizations. Let me make sure I didn't lie on that. That was the regulation. They refer to it in the legal references, but I lied. They don't refer to it specifically in the policy, the law. The law is in the regulation.
So
So
if
you're
the
concerned-
state made it a state law, then we would have to include it in our policies. We don't get to pick and choose those.
Your concern is that somehow we could make a change to the vaccination without bringing it to the board?
Yes. That's my concern.
I mean, I guess we could. It has not been our practice. But
You could table it and have an attorney speak to it.
So if there's a specific concern about COVID, you may have noticed in the regulation this wording, however, schools may not require immunization for COVID-19 or any variant of COVID-19 unless the immunization is first prescribed by rule adopted pursuant to state law, et cetera, et cetera.
is that in the policy?
It's in the regulation that you're looking
Yeah,
at
it's in the
adopting.
regulation.
Yep, so the regulation itself, I think, addresses the concern that you're raising.
I mean, we try not to do unlawful things. So,
I mean, we're all here now. 10 years from now, when this is still, it's just, okay.
But if it says in the
then it-
regulations that we could not
Right,
do that.
it goes on to
then
say, to
that's-
reiterate, finally, schools may not require any resident of the state to receive the COVID-19 immunization, or any variant of the COVID-19 immunization. And then it references the state law that requires that action on our part.
Okay, thank you. Anybody would like to make a motion?
Motion to adopt the proposed changes in policy services advisory volume 34, number 3, number 737, and number 738 from September 22nd as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the proposed changes in Policy Services Advisory, Volume 34, Number 3, Numbers 737 and 738 from September 2022 as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Are Our last voting item is to consider approving the 2021-2022 annual financial report as presented. Brian, what would you like to tell us about that?
It's not deja vu. We actually did vote on this last governing board meeting. There's just so much that goes into the annual financial report. It's due for the governing board to vote by October 15th and upload it to the state. And it just happens the auditors come after that. And so they review records, they give recommendations, and a lot of things that they speak to are things that you don't know about until actually they look at it. Hence, one of our only 4 audit findings was a new rule that we didn't know that we had to follow. Anyway, there were a few things on the AFR that I did need to change. One was actually an input issue in one of the cells. It was off about 6,000. 2 other were, there was a grant or application opportunity to help bridge the gap between school and home when it came to distance learning, and we could buy Chromebooks and provide hotspots. It's called the Emergency Connectivity Fund. We would make expenses and get reimbursed, and we did that with the best intent on how to do it, and they advised that actually it was a little better to deposit into a new fund that we didn't know about, and so I had to create a new fund. It went and changed the AFR, and the expense came out of the area that we originally had. The other change was we have rented cell towers to Verizon, and we get money every month for those. And actually, I didn't know this, but Sprint actually rents airwaves from us. We actually have a bandwidth dedicated to education, and they pay $2,000 a month to piggyback on our bandwidth. Pretty nice. But those are called long-term land leases, and a new regulation says that they don't go into our civic fund, which is for renting buildings. They actually go into our school plant fund, which is a different fund. So I had to pull that revenue out of the civics fund, put it into the school plant fund. Anyway, those were changes, and actually I did have a most recent email from them saying, I need you to tweak one more thing, which is why I'm giving you the document that Sarah passed. There was another $39,000 of expenses in that emergency connectivity fund that needed to be swapped to that new fund that I said. And it was not part of the attachments with the posting on Friday, so I did hand out, and essentially what you have in your hand is a page 1 with a highlighted cell where there was the expense, and then the page, what is it? 6 is the highlighted cell where the expense went to after I journal entered it. So it wasn't in the attachment, so I needed to bring an updated document. With that being said, changes need to be brought to the governing board for a new vote on the FR. Otherwise, it's an audit finding, and we don't like those, and we're so good at avoiding them. So I am presenting a new AFR that you had attached with the changes on the document that was passed out, and I can answer any questions about the changes that you want.
Any questions? Could I get a motion?
My job is fun.
I'll move that we approve the 2021-22 annual financial report as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we consider that we approve the 2021-2022 annual financial report as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, we move on to the information items. Mr. Moore, I can't wait for your last of my
For
school
you.
board summary budget reports.
One last time and enthusiastic as presented.
Thank you.
You should ask a question about it, given it's your last one.
I wouldn't know what to ask.
Good statement.
All right. Anybody else have any questions on those? Number 2, community comments. Anybody have community comments to share?
I had a lot of people saying that they were going to go see the history curriculum. Not sure if they've been here or not, so I don't know if they've come down to look at it, but I think they're looking forward to the opportunity. I've heard some comments about it, but we'll share that at the appropriate time. Nope, that's it.
Okay. Anybody else? Ladies? Okay. Future agenda items? I assume we can put superintendent succession on those.
On the next
Just
12 meetings.
put it on for the next year.
Yep.
Okay. And upcoming meeting dates. The regular study and voting session, as we voted this evening, will be held on January 10th, 2023 at 5 p.m. in this room. Couple other things going on. The ASBA annual conference is in Phoenix, December 14 to 16, and we have several people attending that. And the PUSD Governing Board member swearing-in ceremony will be held December 16, 2022 at 4 p.m. right here. I really feel bad that I will not be able to attend. I'll be in Ireland buying my house.
Good for you.
And winter break will be held December 22nd, 2022 to January 4, 2023.